All
All
right.
right, so we're live, Blake.
All right.
All right, so Blake, we could start off. So this is our second interview with you. So yeah, just want you to tell the listeners how your trip to LA was.
It was a kind of a whirlwind. It was pretty fun, but pretty hard to summarize, I guess. I mean, I was there with some friends for the first part. We drove down. The road trip was pretty fun.
Who'd you go down with?
Basically, what's that?
Who did you go down with?
I drove down with George and Missy, and then we met some other people down there. We met Steve Faulkner and Bruce, a bunch of Portland people, basically. So it was sort of a Portland photo trip
Oh, cool,
that
nice.
I had planned. Yeah, it was kind of fun. It was because I don't usually shoot with other people too often, so it was
Mm,
good to like sort of hang out. And photography can be a little isolating sometimes,
mm,
so to sort of share that activity with other people was kind of fun. There's a bunch of people that basically the people that I share photos with my monthly photo group.
mm.
So usually we're looking at each other's photos, so this is a good time to like actually go take pictures together. So anyway, that was the first part of the trip. I had that planned a few months ahead. We had sort of all planned to go down there just as like a winter getaway sort of
Mm.
thing. And then when I had that already planned, Matt changed up his workshop schedule a little bit, and then
Mm.
it turned out I could actually sit in on his workshop, which was at the end of the first. Everyone that was with them the first part of the trip went home, and then I hung out for a few more days with Matt and helped him teach the Leica workshop and took a bunch of pictures. So I was there about 10 days total. It
Oh,
was
that's
good.
that's
I guess.
awesome.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about your experience teaching the street photography workshop in LA with Matt Stewart? Because you also did a workshop in Stockholm about maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, was it?
Yeah, 2013.
So maybe can you share your experiences perhaps teaching in LA versus your experiences in Stockholm?
It's a little hard to. I'm not really a natural teacher. I mean, Matt is sort of the guide and the more experienced pro, and he's like, I think we were talking about this earlier. He's much more dynamic, theatrical speaker, so he's better to lead that kind of thing. And then he's basically been on board for the workshops I've done. I did one in Stockholm. We did one in Paris last year. This one
Mm,
in LA. And so I sort of do what I can, but I feel a little bit out of my element because, well, first of all, I'm not a natural teacher, and second of all, I'm not even sure if street photography is something that is easy to teach. I mean,
mm,
you can sort of walk around with people and point out how you do things, but what it really comes down to is people have to go out and just do it on their own and take a camera and go look for stuff. And I mean, you can sort of teach people how to do that, but it's a lot of it just comes down to doing it.
mm.
So that's sort of I mean, that's how I view the workshops is like maybe these students need a little kick in the butt to like get on for like a whole day to go out and just shoot all day. And I mean, that's, if you can do that, that might be just a head start for a lot of people, is just to get motivated for that. And then the critique, actually, that's pretty valuable, I think, for a lot of people. Is we spend one day shooting, this is the second day on critique, and that's where we sort of dig into the photos and figure out really what's going on and try and give people a little more guidance.
Hmm.
But as far as like teaching people how to shoot street photos, I feel pretty unqualified to do that.
Well, I think one thing you're definitely qualified for is you have such a I think you have a very deep and also a very wide breadth in terms of the street photography genre. And I mean, your blog's been you've been blogging for what, eight over 8 years now, right?
Yeah, but it's not all. I mean, I even after all that time, I'm not really comfortable with the label street photography. I mean,
Hmm.
sometimes it delves into that area just because I sort of intersect in that, and I've sort of been put in that box or whatever. But
Hmm.
I mean, street photography for me is just going out and finding pictures on your own without too much planning or staging or anything like that. So if
Hmm.
you call, I mean, that's how I consider street photography. It's, I think I see a lot of street photography that is sort of more thought out and fits into more of the class category of like urban settings and strangers and juxtapositions, posters, all that stuff.
Hmm.
And I sort of steer away from all that stuff. So I've just been shooting what I shoot for years and years, 20 years plus.
Hmm.
And then if it fits, whatever fits into street photography, it fits. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm not really worried about the label necessarily. So that's what maybe is some of my uncomfortability with teaching street photography. It's sort of like, I don't know. I don't even know if I'm a street photographer.
Well, I think it is really interesting because I've actually admired your work for maybe about when I first started street photography, maybe like 7, 8 years ago. I guess about the time you started blogging. I remember I stumbled on the In Public work website, and when I first saw a lot of your photos, I was really inspired. I'm like, wow, how did this guy make all these surrealistic photos? I mean, your classic photos, the lady with the coat looked like she's being eaten by the bush. The kid with his head over the waterfall looked like he's getting decapitated. But I look at your new portfolio, at least you have on the In Public site, both your color and your black and white work is. It seems like you're really making a shift away from, maybe what they call the in public look of, kind of funny juxtapositions and one-liners, like kind of like the Elliot Erwitt style, versus something that's a lot more personal, emotional, very like like emotionally abstract, if you know what I mean. Like, how have you seen your street photography or your photography in general shift maybe the last 3 years, 2 years?
I've always shot the same stuff. I mean, I'm not changing at all, really, but and it's a little hard to read too much into the In Public portfolio because that's just a certain number of pictures. And I think there's 30 black and white and 30 color. You could, so I definitely picked ones. We just did a big revamp of the site, and I picked ones that would sort of not fit the street photography cliche, just because I wanted to put something a little different on there. That doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going in a new direction. That's just what I've been shooting the whole time. And the ones that I had on there earlier were sort of me trying to fit into the street photography box a little more. So I could I shoot whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't have to be people. It doesn't have to be cities. And I've just been shooting pretty similarly all along. It can be like edited into like this 30 pictures or this 30 pictures or whatever. It's not necessarily me going in a different direction, but I think there was definitely sort of more of a conscious effort the last edit for me to sort of put pictures on there deliberately to make people not look at just as street photos, but to sort of wonder like, oh, what makes a street photograph? And are these even street photographs? Maybe they aren't, who knows? But to sort of, I have this little platform and I can sort of like play around with it a little bit, right? But I mean, who knows? The next time around, I might put something totally weird on there just to sort of see if those count as street photographs.
I think I really like that because it seems like you're really pushing the boundaries of what is quote quote street photography because I think a lot of people get bubbled in.
Well, what do you think it is? I mean, what is it?
I mean, I see street photography for me. I think my definition and how I feel about street photography is certainly colored by my experiences studying sociology. So I think for me, street photography is about documenting humanity, whatever that means. And it doesn't necessarily, I don't think it necessarily has to be of people, but like even just like an empty park bench, why is there a park bench there? Park benches were created by human beings for human beings to be used in a certain way. And I think that says something about society. But,
So
nowadays,
you're trying to study humans. You see it as a study of human behavior, basically?
I see, yeah, like I think of human society, I would say. I mean, even if you think about a street, like who are streets made by and who are streets for? Streets are this construction made by human beings for a society to function in a certain way. But honestly, I feel that anything could really be street photography nowadays. For me, I'm just more interested in terms of like what makes an emotional and moving and telling photo that challenges me as a viewer to see the world in a different way, rather than being like, oh, photo A is a street photograph and photo B isn't a street photo. And it also, I was reading some of stuff on your blog and some of the interviews you've been having, maybe like a year or two ago, but you've also been more interested in capturing more emotional, spontaneous moments rather than perfectly lining everything up, kind of like what Stephen Shore or Friedlander would do. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I think the lead into street photography for me is like, I'm basically making self-portraits. I mean, that's how I think about it more and more it's just, I'm sort of figuring out what I want to look at and figuring out how I see things. and how I can express that in a picture. And so it's not really about, I mean, you said it's for you about documenting human behavior. I mean, sometimes I sort of do that
Hmm.
because other humans make me wonder about myself, but
Hmm.
it's more and more about me sort of getting into myself and just trying to explore and figure out what I react to. And then a lot of times the photos, it's always a surprise when I look at the photos later, and the ones that I didn't expect to turn out might turn out really well, and the ones that I did expect don't turn out really well. So that process right there is sort of playing with myself and my expectations, and like, whoa, why am I drawn to this picture? That doesn't look like anything that I planned out, and like those little surprises. I mean, that's sort of what I'm about, right? Is sort of I'm curious. I like to surprise myself. I like to do little puzzles. So all those things sort of combine when I'm out looking for pictures, and I want to just sort of like play with the world and play with myself. So sort of, it's like psychoanalysis, really. I mean, that
Well,
sounds really.
I love the idea that all your photos are kind of a self portrait of yourself, and I think it really does show that. I think, especially when I look at your blog, I think your tastes are very eclectic. I mean, you're a music DJ. You're also really interested in art, photography, and also I think you have a great sense of humor. And it's almost like sometimes I read your blog and it almost feels like schizophrenic in the sense like I feel like this character of B is almost like six different people. And
That's a good thing.
like I mean like it's hilarious like one you'll have like a random photo meme like the camera sutra or whatever, then you'll have like a really in-depth interview with a photographer. Another one is just kind of like, oh, I'm off to Hollywood, guys, packing my bags. And it's like
The things I'm putting on the blog are like what I'm deliberately putting out there as my sort of exterior version of myself, right? So who knows if that's really me or not? I don't know, but I definitely I want to mix it up. I want to like make people wonder a little bit, and so that's definitely some of the blog is like putting shit out there that is like maybe it means nothing. Maybe people react strangely, and if they do, that's even better because it sort of like throws people off the scent a little.
yeah.
I mean, you mentioned the DJ aspect. I don't even know if you've ever listened to the show, but it's very similar to that too. In the musical selection that I do, is that my basic musical philosophy is to pick a playlist that sounds totally unlike itself every time.
Mm-hmm.
So a song will play, and then I'll pick a song that's like deliberately, completely opposite that song, and that goes on like 2 hours. So the entire playlist is like confusing and doesn't sound like anything that should go together. And the next playlist the next week is going to be something that sounds even less like the first playlist. So every playlist is different and every song is different. And so to the point where you can't tell where I'm coming from. I mean, that's sort of that's my what I'm hoping to get to. I don't know if I actually reach that point. I mean, obviously I have certain songs I like and certain songs I don't. But within that realm, it's pretty broad, and I can sort of like really mix it up. And the idea of Pandora is disgusting to me. I mean, the idea of like hearing a song and then having someone recommend what you should like after that song. I mean, that's like the exact wrong direction, I think, for music and photography. I mean, you should just go. I mean, if you're looking at a photo over here, maybe there's a photo here, but go ahead and do a 180 and look straight behind you. Maybe that's where the photo is. It's just, I don't know, trying to play with myself, trying to make it unpredictable and not fall into any kind of rut whatsoever.
Well, there's a lot of questions that are going through my head. So one of the questions is, I love, I think you can make so many different parallels between photography and DJing music because, you're mentioning the fact that you don't want every single song to perfectly stream together. Like maybe let's say Pandora, it's like, oh, if you like artist A, you might also like artist B and C. But when it comes to photography books, a lot of sequences, they'll have, let's say, two photos on opposite pages, which are quite similar. And, your black and white photo blog, you try to link certain photos that are kind of random, but somehow correlated. But at the same time, I actually, when I was looking at your portfolio,
Are you talking about Tumblr?
Sorry? Yeah, your
talking
Tumblr, your black and white Tumblr. But at the same time, when I looked at your portfolio, it's consistent in the sense that like, it's your color set and it's your black and white set, but all the photos are kind of different, yet they kind of work. So like what are, as a photographer or a DJ or, person who enjoys art, like what is the fine line between consistency and variation and like I guess mixing things up because I think part of photography you kind of want there to be some consistency like you're shooting most of your work black and white tri-X or Arista on your Leica and your color work is mostly your Fuji work but at the same time you're trying to switch it up so how do you stay creative and keep doing what you do without getting bored and how do you stay inspired?
Well, I just shoot as far as like going out to figure out what to photograph. I just shoot what looks good in a photo. I mean, that's not like a conscious choice, really. So I'm attracted to certain things. I mean, you're attracted to certain things when you go out, and I'm attracted to what I'm attracted to, and I mean that creates my voice photographically. I mean, putting them on Tumblr or a portfolio, which you mentioned, is a little bit different because then you're taking a little bit more of a conscious shaping to the whole thing. I mean, you can go out and take all these pictures, but then to plan the order and the edit and everything like that requires a little more. I mean, there's all sorts of ways you can play that game. So, I mean, you mentioned the Tumblr. That may be why I took a little break from that, is because I felt like it was becoming a little bit too much of a pattern. I mean, I definitely played with patterns and sort of a game that I would play with myself. Put a photo on there and then think about like, oh, what does that photo remind me of? How does that relate to some other photo? And then like put another photo up the next day that sort of relates to that. But if you look at the whole stream, I mean, there's a few hundred of them on there. I don't know. They sort of felt a little bit like they were going too predictably. Or like they weren't really. I think it was more about sort of creating my own edit for myself and teaching myself what my photos were about than like creating any stream that had any like, lasting value as far as like a real edit or anything. I mean, a lot of the combinations between the photos are pretty surface level and sort of they're not. I wouldn't call them like super deep or anything, but so that was sort of just a big experiment. I mean, I'm not sure what you refer to as the portfolio.
When I say the portfolio, I just mean your in public portfolio because I went to your website and it looked like you took down most of your photos. There's the nice mugshot of you.
That may be. I sort of went through a big delete session a few months ago, so I ended the Tumblr and got rid of a lot of the web stuff. Maybe for the same reason, just because it felt like it wasn't really surprising to me anymore. I mean, you probably have this experience with your own photos too. After you've seen your own photo like 50 times or whatever, what is it going to tell you after that? I mean, it doesn't. You don't have to look at it anymore. I mean, maybe other people out there might want to look at it, but even then, it's sort of like done. So so that portfolio is gone. I mean, I keep the in public stuff up there just for, for group effort, basically, just because I got to have something on there. But I mean, all that stuff. All the web in general is just sort of a big facade. I mean, it's sort of however you want to portray yourself for a certain limited amount of time. I don't know if it has too much lasting value. I mean, and that sort of raises the question, what does have lasting value? Maybe it's books, which I've been toying with that idea for years and years and years, or like photo shows, which even those last like, a month or so and then they're done. But I don't know. I mean, I'm always thinking about my pictures and how they might fit into any of these molds. And it's good to sort of take a break, step away from the web for a little bit and sort of think about other avenues and how they might, what might happen in those areas. Did I
no, sorry. I asked you a lot of questions at once.
What was the question?
No, I think you mentioned you answered most of them. But one of the big questions I had was one problem I have is because you say you've been pretty much shooting everything you found interesting the last 20 plus years, but how do you stay motivated? Because I have a hard time. So right now you're living in Eugene and you go to Portland. Was it once a month for your photo meetups or once every other month or something like that?
I'm up there about 2 or 3 times a month.
Okay, so that's pretty good. And I live in Berkeley, and Berkeley's a pretty interesting place, and there's a pretty cool downtown. I would say if I could describe it, it's probably in between Portland and Eugene in the sense that Portland's a lot busier and I think more interesting than Berkeley, but Eugene is it's a lot more quiet, right? So
Yeah, I've been
how
to
do you stay
Berkeley.
motivated in your hometown? And sorry, what was your question? What did you say about Berkeley?
Oh no, I know Berkeley pretty well. I think Berkeley has a lot to offer. And
Yeah, so that's the whole
yeah,
thing is that I know it's a pretty interesting place, but at the same time, it's kind of like after a while you become a little bit bored by your own hometown. How do you stay motivated in your own hometown to keep shooting?
good question. I mean, I've slowed down actually probably in the last few years. I was doing these grid projects
Yeah.
for the last 10 years or so, and
Hmm.
those both of those I did one for EG and one for Portland. They both ended last year, and so those. I mean, they weren't necessarily like street shooting. They were more sort of social landscape stuff, kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But
Hmm.
they would definitely got me out there like on a regular basis. I would spend like 2 or 3 days a week just like walking for an afternoon
Hmm.
in a new place. And that,
Hmm.
I mean, there's nothing like that to sort of motivate you. And
Hmm.
it was always sort of like, I always got excited about like, all right, I'm going to go to a new place today and see what's out there, even if it was just in the middle of nowhere,
That's cool. Yeah.
some suburb. So that has always, I mean, just the idea of seeing something new,
Hmm.
it doesn't take much to motivate me beyond that.
Hmm.
But now, I mean, those are done. I've basically explored. I've seen all of Eugene times, and I've seen all of Portland. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no block in either city that I haven't checked out.
Hmm.
That may be why I'm reaching out a little bit more now. I mean, went to LA recently and
Hmm.
stretching out. I like to go to different cities to sort of kickstart my photography,
Hmm.
and hopefully it doesn't come to that point where I'm dependent on exotic travel to sort
Hmm.
of get me going. But I definitely shoot more on those trips than I would just shooting around town. I mean, I shoot, just on an average. I shoot it on a daily basis here, but it's not like a continuous thing like it was maybe 10 years ago, where I was just like, I mean, I had no time to do anything. I was just like shooting, shooting, shooting. So that was the initial
Uh-huh.
part, and that rush has definitely faded a little bit. Where I'm sort of like taking, like today, didn't shoot that much. I went and shot this logging show. There's little events here and there that I capture, but as far as like continuous motivation, I think I said it earlier. It's about like finding. I'm motivated by new things,
Hmm.
so
Hmm. Hmm.
it's hard to find that now because I know a lot of what's around here. But even people in like, I mean, you live in Berkeley. I could probably spend years shooting Berkeley, or like live in like New York City that say like they have a hard time motivating or finding
Hmm.
new things. I mean, I don't know. It's also relative. I mean, stuff is out there. You just got to sort of have the optimism and the motivation to go out and find it.
Hmm.
I've never. I mean, there's never been a time where I've spent like 2 hours with a camera walking around that I haven't found at least one or two photos. I
That's a
mean,
good way to think of it. Yeah.
if you go out and do it, but the motivation to actually like go do it is a little bit harder when you're sitting at home and like, I've seen all this and it's all stuff already. There's always new things out there, but
Hmm.
just have to trick
So
you. Maybe
it seems like it's definitely much more of mindset. I like that point. Yeah, like there are days where I don't feel motivated, but I'll just go out for a walk, and then if you walk for an hour or two, you're bound to see at least one thing that's interesting or something that's familiar, but something you haven't seen it quite the same way before.
I mean, you have the whole Bay Area too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's you could shoot your whole life and never see all of that.
Hmm.
So it's a little bit different than living in Eugene. I mean, maybe I think there are definitely places around here that I haven't seen yet. I shouldn't say I've seen all of it, but I mean, like I say, it's all relative. I mean, you're living in Berkeley, you feel like it's sort of old already, but just look around. There's like 10 million people in the Bay Area, right? There's you could go to wherever, San Francisco, South Bay,
Hmm.
who knows?
Hmm.
As far as street photography, I mean, the sense of like just wandering in a new place looking for candids or unposed stuff.
Hmm.
I mean, the material is sort of inexhaustible in the Bay Area, I think.
Hmm. So at the moment, are you shooting much Instax color photos anymore, or is it mostly your
No,
Leica and black and white film?
I'd say it's a mix. I mean, I shoot. It's kind of funny. The Instax stuff I go hot and cold on. I mean, sometimes I go really. I'll shoot that a lot, and then like right now I haven't shot it much for the last week. I had this. I've sort of been stymied because I got an Instax camera that was an older camera that had more options on it, and it just broke. So now,
Oh no.
sort of back to my old Instax camera, which I know pretty well, but it's still fun for some things. I don't know. I may be, and this is sort of a point I've reached with various cameras over the years. I may be reaching a slowing down phase with the Instax. I don't feel like there's much more it can teach me. So I need something for color, and that's what it is for now. But who knows? I may get like a little digital point and shoot or something like that. It's a little bit up in the air right now.
When you at least when you're shooting color, whether it's Instax or your Diana or any other camera you used in the past, would you say that you see the world differently when you're holding a camera that you're shooting color with, or is it kind of the same but you're trying to shoot in a different way?
I'm not sure. No, it's
Like,
I'm
do you look for
seeing
anything
the same,
differently,
but
or you see the world differently?
the Instax allow what I do with that camera is with the little like macro lens, which is the little tap add-on feature, and that's really where the Instax does it has a sort of its own real special voice with that thing. So that lens is like it only focuses within like a foot or maybe a foot and a half. So that right there is like changing your perspective, right? Because it's like focusing you in on little tiny stuff. I mean, I walk around and like with my Leica, I'm usually focused on sort of broader, like big landscapes and layering things and like stuff that's like 50 feet away or whatever. The Instax, the little macro lens, you're like much more. You could spend like 2 hours just on one block looking at all the little stuff. This is a gum or little like this and that. So it sort of changes your view in that way. As far as the color versus black and white, it's that's hard to say. I mean, I shoot pretty much the same thing either way. I mean, I'm always looking for like shapes and sort of graphic forms and stuff like that. And that's true in color also. But I don't know. I think the Instax has a little bit more of a romantic feel. It's sort of like it's a moody, sort of a sentimental camera. So I shoot like scenes that look more like postcards, sort of. And I'm trying not to have them look totally cheesy, but it has that like emotional element that I'm shooting a Leica. I'm much more like geometry and stuff, and more like, is it the left brain, I guess?
Whatever side of the brain it is.
The rational. I'm more like lining stuff up and sort of like formal.
That's interesting because you talk about the left brain versus the right brain, and maybe you're talking about like psychoanalysis because I read this in one of your other interviews, but I'll also notice in my own is that based on the chats we've had via video, you seem like such a nice, friendly guy, and you also describe yourself as a bit shy, but the B character on the internet is a much more kind of like a jokester, prankster, kind of very outspoken without a filter. And it's so interesting to see these two different personalities. Would you say would you call it like a Jekyll and a Hyde kind of thing? Or is it more like, or is it the B is who you really want to be, but the internet allows you to be a little more transparent? Or like, how would you psychoanalyze yourself in terms of these two different characters? Who is the real Blake Andrews?
Good question. Well, that's sort of what I was saying earlier. I mean, all these things on the web are sort of like projections of who you can make yourself into any person you want to be, right? I mean, the person you're talking to in the video is probably like more of a sense of like a real person. You look at online as sort of like a highly filtered version of someone, and like you look at someone's like 50 photos on a portfolio, and that's even a more filtered version, right? It's sort of like these projections of someone that are sort of relate to that person, but they're just they're projections. They're not necessarily the real person. And so I mean that whatever. The blogger, there's definitely parts of me that come out in that, and then there's other parts of me that don't come out in that, just because it's not really the right forum to express certain aspects of myself. So the sort of the, I mean, I think why the reason B feeds a lot of my sort of pranksterism and sarcasm and all that stuff is because I think there's like a void out there that needs to be filled for all that stuff. I mean, if I don't do that, who's going to do it? Someone has to sort of be the call bullshit on a lot of stuff.
That's actually one thing I really admire about you and your blog is the fact that I think you're definitely right. There's no one out there who really does call bullshit on so many things that happen. Like I saw your post about talking about why am I just blanking on it? Vivian Meyer. Yeah. So a lot of the stuff you talked about Vivian Meyer, I think everyone had the same questions that you had, but you're the only person I know that actually had the balls to publicly say what was really on your mind and how you felt about it. And I feel that there are very few bloggers nowadays with some sort of courage to really say what's on their mind and no one really puts their neck on the line out there like you do, I think.
What did I say about Vivian Meyer? I've said a lot of things about her, I think, but I don't think I said anything too controversial.
It wasn't so controversial. It was just very honest, and I think, especially, I think your blog is read by a lot of people I know who I consider pretty serious photographers, and so, do you ever get scared or worried that, by maybe being very, very honest about your opinion, that this could some way backfire and affect you in a negative way? Or maybe even a better question is, how do you have the courage to be so honest in your writing?
I just gotta write what I feel like writing. I mean, it's not. I don't sit there and think about weigh all the options of courage and all that stuff. I don't think it's going to have too much negative influence. I mean, maybe it will. Who knows? But how would it? I think it might come back negatively in the sense that a lot of people are probably turned off on it and they just won't read it. But that's, I mean, who cares? There's some people read it and some don't. I can't do anything about that. As far as I don't think someone's going to come up to me on the street and say I hate you, so and so. Yeah. I don't know. I can't. It's all. I mean, if you looked at it, you probably know the tone is sort of tongue in cheek anyway. So I wouldn't take anything on there at face value. I mean, it's all. Who knows what's real on there and what isn't? And that's sort of like a model for the web in general, right? It's people. You could, have all these friends on Facebook or various social media sites. How much do you really know about any of those people? They're all sort of just. It's like Plato's cave, there's shadows in the cave and you're sort of trying to figure out what they're like, but you're just seeing what they want to show you. And so I don't know, that's how I would look at anything on the web, and hopefully people look at the blog that way. I don't think we can look at it and go oh, I really know this person. I don't think.
Well, so I want to ask you more about blogging, because this is out of my personal selfish curiosity, because so I've been blogging for about I've had my blog for close to 4 years now, and you've been blogging twice as long as me. It's 8 years, and there are certain days where I'm so motivated, I'm on fire and very passionate about writing what I want to write, and I'll drink 4 shots of espresso and just get down to work and feel really good about it. But then the next day, I'm out of ideas, and I'm shit, how do I keep this going? How do I stay motivated? And and one thing I saw you write about in the past was, kind of obsessing about views, comments, likes, and stuff like that. But after a while, realizing that's not so important. How have you stayed motivated to blog over all these years? And, essentially at this point, why do you do it?
Well, I haven't done it much in the last few weeks. Maybe that means I'm not motivated lately. I go through spurts. I mean, sometimes I'm really into it. It's sort of like what you were just saying. And sometimes I'm not. Right now, I'm not. I haven't thought about it too much. I've been sort of wrapped up in some other projects too, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to do that. But I don't know. It comes and goes. I mean, sometimes I'll get like a little brainstorm and I'll write about it, and a lot of times I'll go for like a week and not. I just don't have anything that I want to express. I think it. I mean, it used to be when I first started doing it. It was much more about sort of my photo journey and my thoughts about taking pictures and walking around and what I did today and all that stuff. And so it's definitely shifted away from that, and now it's more like focused on the outer photo scene and sort of what I think about this or that, or what photos I've seen lately or books or whatever, stuff like that. So it's taken that turn and become more sort of critical, or more of a critical voice. But I sort of feel funny saying like how I stay motivated, because right now I'm not totally motivated.
Okay. So you also go through spouts of not feeling motivated.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a little. I mean, some of your probably like the one you wrote something recently about the decisive moment. I think it went on for like, I don't know, 5,000 words or something. It was like,
Yeah.
I don't. Maybe it was the 4 cups of espresso or something. But
Yeah.
you get in these little bursts where you're like just sort of free form writing. It must take you like hours to do all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean my writing process. This is the problem. I don't know how sustainable this is because, I mean, I'm only 27 and I feel like with every shot of espresso I have, it cuts out like a day of my lifespan. And at this point, I'm like physically unable to write unless I'm like high on caffeine, which I don't think is really healthy. But
You ever try a beer?
um,
No, no.
I've thought about it, but I just get really lazy. Like I think I'm more of the, because like I think everyone prefers having a certain type of drug. Like certain people prefer uppers and certain people prefer downers. I think I'm a person that I definitely need more stimulation. So caffeine is certainly something that turns me on, but at the same time, I'm just like become horribly addicted to it. Like today, I've actually gone the whole day without drinking coffee, and I have like the worst headache ever, and I have absolutely no inspiration to write. But I feel like maybe I have some sort of obligation to write because I know I have an audience. Like, do you ever feel like that? Like knowing that there's people waiting out there for a new post on your blog, and you feel like you're kind of letting them down by not blogging more consistently.
Screw those people. I mean, who cares? That sounds callous, but you can't worry about those people. You gotta worry about yourself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're like, still feel like you're like putting something on a platter for serving people up. I mean, that people can find stuff. I mean, they're not like sitting there on the edge of their seat waiting for what you're gonna write about.
I don't know. I would have to say I had your blog on my Flipboard, listen, my RSS reader on my phone, and I follow, let's say, like 4 blogs, and you're one of them. And I every morning I'd refresh, and then it'd be like a week. I'm like, Blake hasn't posted anything new yet. What's wrong with him?
Well, it's the lack of motivation. I mentioned I threw out the beer quite. The way a lot of times what I'll do is I'll write. Like I have some coffee in the morning and write really sort of raw form, because that's when I have energy, and then I'll do that first thing in the morning, and then usually when I go edit is like later in the evening when I've had a beer or two. So there's like 2 sort of separate actions. I'll write. So I guess it's the 2 drugs, right? The write on coffee, and then beer helps me edit when I sort of feel a little more loose after a beer, and I can edit in a more. It still doesn't feel as tight. I mean, the writing loosens up a little bit at that point. So there's sort of like a balance there between like the sort of the formalized, like tight sort of writing, and then I want my writing to be sort of like stretched out a little bit too, and be not quite poetry, but have a real like casual feel. So that's sort of the balance, right? So write in the morning, have a beer at night, and then edit at that point, and then the usual cycle is like the next morning I'll like do a quick read through of so I get like a day to sleep on it and figure out like what, if that's really what I want to say, and then before anything goes out. So that's my process. I mean, probably everyone has a whole different thing, but yeah.
That sounds like a good strategy. Something I might try. Maybe have a beer or two before I do some editing in the evening. But
It's the suggestion. Try other whatever.
Yeah.
Try well, don't try certain drugs. Probably wouldn't work. Uh, I don't know. Try like a
Stay away from
genie.
the heroin.
That's what I found works for me. But
And I kind of like this idea of separating the writing phase and also the editing phase. And I'm sure that it's the same for you in photography, like the shooting phase versus the editing phase. Can you tell us a little bit more about, I guess, how you differentiate the two different phases?
uh, the shooting phase is pretty frantic. I mean, I'll just go out if there's anything that looks remotely interesting, I'll shoot it. So obviously, that's not. I'm not going to show people all that stuff, but it's just sort of pure gut reaction, right? So I'm going out and just pure instinct, figuring out what I want to see and what I want to capture. And the editing phase is that usually happens in the darkroom when I go, like I'll sit on my film for a while. I think you might have done this recently too, where it takes me about 9 months to get to my film.
Yeah.
By that
About
point,
the same for me.
sort of forgotten what was in the shooting phase, but I have much more, so I can just pay attention to the pictures. And like this happens in a darkroom where I'll like look at all the film, figure out which ones I want to print, and basically that's the most important layer of editing. Is if I print something, that means there's something in the picture that I respond to, that I want to see bigger, that I want to figure out if I like it or not. So that's sort of like the base editing phase, and that's sort of what I was talking about earlier. Sometimes that phase is really surprising. I mean, you can go in the darkroom, and some of the pictures you didn't even. I mean, you forgot all the pictures by then, but some things that you have no idea why the picture works. It sort of jumps out at you on the sheet, and you like print it up, and it's like, whoa, that's an amazing picture. How does that even work? I mean, that's sort of the magic of photography, right? It's like you can there's no formula to like put it all together and say like this picture is gonna be printable, but you can look on your contact sheet and like all of a sudden, whoa, those things sort of work together.
So in a roll of, let's say, 36 shots, how many photos would you decide to print on a roll on average?
It's such a crapshoot. I mean, it just depends on where, when, what the subject is. I mean, in busy city, like probably these LA photos, I bet I'll probably print 4 or 5 per roll, something like that. And sometimes I'll go through a whole roll in like a roll of Eugene and not print any of them, just because none of them really excite me. So it's total crapshoot. But I would say that and this is something I've noticed. I have no idea how it works, but the good pictures sort of tend to stick together on the frame. Like you'll get like a little run. Like I cut my film into sheets of 6 frames, and like there'll be like 3 good pictures on one little run of 6, and then like the rest of the roll will have nothing, which is almost like some hidden power, like zapping the camera or something. Like, oh, boom, there's the pictures. Yeah. I don't know what. It's something I've always wondered about, but.
So you said you sit on your film for an average of, let's say, 9 months before you get to them. How many rolls of film have you accumulated by then?
9 months?
Yeah.
Well, it goes in a rolling cycle. It's not like I'm sitting on the film waiting. I'm printing film during that whole 9-month period. I'm printing film from the last 9 months. So,
oh wow, yeah.
I mean, it's just like a backlog, right? So I'm shooting on one end, printing on the other end, and there's sort of like a gap between them. And in like over 9 months, I can't know how many. It just depends. I probably shoot like a few hundred rolls in that time. I don't know, like 200 or 300 rolls.
Damn. So how many rolls? How many rolls a month on average you shoot? Would you say?
Well, that's what I was just trying to figure out. It depends on where and when. I'd say between 20 and 40. So
wow, that's a lot.
Not really. Actually, I mean, I'm slowing down. I sort of was. That's why I said earlier about the grid projects expanding. I mean, during those projects, I was shooting probably more than that. But I mean, that's the way I was shooting, right? So I described my shooting method earlier. I just go out there and I respond quickly to like whatever I see. So it's not like I'm taking a lot of time to think about like, oh, is this frame going to work out or not? If there's any chance of it working out, I'll shoot it. Or even if there's no chance, I'll shoot it. So I go through film pretty. I mean, I generate a lot from film.
So how do you stay updated for like stay on top of your film? Don't you ever feel like overwhelmed? You're like, oh my god, there's so much film that I'm sitting on that I haven't processed or looked at yet. Like, do you ever worry
Well,
that you're gonna be like Winogrand one day and be dead with like 5,000 roll that's untouched or whatever?
my plan is to stop shooting 9 months before I die. So I'm that. But assuming I can plan it out, but no, that it's not overwhelming because it's totally organized, right? I mean, it's the process I just described is methodical. I have it all organized on one end, shooting, and then the other end I organize it printing, and I go print like a certain times a month, and so it's not chaotic at all. It's very organized. I know exactly where every photo is I can go find it in negatives, and I know I know even if it takes me 9 months, I'm gonna get to every single thing. I'm gonna look at every photo.
Wow.
It's just gonna take me a little bit of time, right? So it's not like overwhelming because I know it's not going anywhere. It's not like I'm gonna lose the film. So it's just a methodical thing, right? I think every photographer has their method. I mean, I have my way, and then whatever. If people use Lightroom or some other method, you sort of fall into some organizational thing where you figure out like where you're going to keep your photos, which ones you're going to do what with, and how they're going to mix in a certain way. I mean, I assume you have that too, right?
No, I'm so unorganized.
Unorganized?
Yeah, it's horrible. Like what my
Gotta
working method is, I just
you're
shoot a
not,
bunch of film, drop it off at Costco. They develop it, scan it to CD for me, give me the CDs. I look at them in Lightroom and I'll pick the ones I like, and then all the film, they're just in a box. Not they're organized. They're organized by like year. So like I have like a 2014 box, 2013 box. So
okay, well,
if I needed to find a negative, it'd take me like at least a week.
well, some of my negatives are hard to find too, but it pays to be organized. I'll just say
Yeah.
that because especially in photography where you're generating so much material for so relatively small amount of like finished products. If you're not organized, it's gonna bury you, I think. And
So can you walk us through like very specifically how you stay organized with shooting film?
I just organize it by date. I mean, that's the easiest organization I know, right? You shoot something on a certain day, you label the film or the print with that date, and then it organizes for you.
Oh, so you actually label the individual films.
No, I keep the film in binders, and each binder is labeled with a date. So like I have a binder like whatever, and I'm working on a binder from last May right now. So like
Yeah.
May 2014. So I know everything in that binder is going to be a certain date, and then when I make a print, I'll write the date on that print. So it just, I mean, no two things can have the same date, right?
Okay. So how about the actual film? So let's say you shoot a roll, and then what happens to that roll? Do you write any marks on the film itself, or do you just toss in a box that has the date on it, or?
I put it in a sleeve. I got it here. Hold on.
Okay. And sorry for those guys watching. I know the video and it's kind of scratchy. Blake has a slower DSLR. Ooh, okay. Show and tell time. All right,
Okay,
cool.
so here's the sleeve.
Nice.
Here's the contact sheet.
Ooh, sweet.
And so all this film is from a certain date. So when I go through here and like make print one of these pictures up, I write the date on the picture.
Oh, cool.
It's not that complicated. It seems like to me it seems like the most logical way to do it. Maybe there's another way too, like you could do filing system or label it with alphabetized or who knows. But that's the way I do it.
Well, that's admirable.
When you're asking about how to keep the film, I just keep it in these sleeves like this. And
No, so what I meant to say was, so that makes sense, but I'm saying, so let's say you have a roll of triacs and you shoot the roll of triacs and then the cassette is done. And then do you actually write the date on the cassette itself? So how do you know which cassette is from what date? What I mean.
Well, I process the film as I go. I mean, I don't wait 9 months to process the film.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh,
So,
okay, okay. That's okay. That's what I meant to say.
yeah, sorry if that was confusing. No, I process the film right after I shoot it,
Oh, really?
and then
Okay.
binders, and I usually make a contact sheet just a few weeks after that. But I don't
Oh,
actually
okay.
print for 9 months. So I got the film.
Oh, I see. Oh, so you develop the films very quickly after you shoot it, but the
Yep,
printing isn't until 9 months after, let's say.
right.
Hmm.
So, I mean, well, 9 months is what it is. I mean, it depends, 9 or 8 months or 10 months, whatever. Sometimes, I mean, this LA trip, like, obviously you go through periods where you shoot a bunch of film and you can't process it right away. So
Yeah.
then you got to be able. So in that, when I do that, I have a little marker and I write down the like if I have a bunch of film at once, I'll write a number on each roll, like 1, 2, 3, up to like whatever.
Hmm.
And then I go back home and I know how to process it. I know the order that goes in.
Hmm.
So it's not that complicated. I mean, you pick a system that helps you sort it out. I mean, sometimes you come back later and if I'll get them a little mixed up in the binder, and then I'll go in the darkroom after 9 months and I'll figure out exactly what the order is. So I like to keep them in like pretty much exact order of date.
Hmm.
If they're a little bit out of order, but so I have like a quality I need to. I sort of look at it as a journal of my life, right? So I want
Journal
it
of
to
your
be
life.
just in the right order. If their one page is like a little bit off, it sort of tweaks me a little bit.
I have a question. Did you study philosophy when you're in school, or do you have an interest in philosophy? You mentioned Plato's Cave and stuff like that.
I took a few classes. I've never studied it like as a degree. Or is that what you mean?
Or I
No.
mean, are you does philosophy interest you, or are you interested in philosophy in general?
Well, yeah, to the extent. I mean, I'm not gonna sit there and read like some heavy philosophy book, but I
Yeah.
think life questions and all that. I mean, that's if you mean that type of philosophy of like general like life theory and what does it all mean and all those questions. Sure. I mean, I think everyone thinks about that.
Because
I mean,
the reason I asked is that one of the things that goes through my mind a lot is I guess the philosophy of photography is that I mean I know there are a lot of like books on like the theory of philosophy, the theory of photography, and it's far too academic for me, I would say. But I'm much more interested in the practical applications of the philosophy of shooting. So like when you're mentioning that for you shooting is kind of like shooting self portraits, is that a life journey you're trying to document what's going through your mind and stuff like that. But do you ever and sometimes this is me like I become a little bit fatalistic in the sense that like I'm like, okay, I'm out here shooting all these photos. What does it mean? Why am I shooting it? No one really cares. And I kind of know I'm shooting it for myself, but at the same time, I kind of get through. I sometimes go through these ways where, uh, you know, I don't
well,
really know why I'm doing it.
that's. I mean, you're asking the same questions we all ask. That's like, tell me when you get the answers.
Or so like so so
Taking
have
all
you
these.
have you thought about that quite often as well?
What's what?
How often do you think about those kind of questions like um,
Well,
the
all the
whys
time.
of photography all the time?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I think anyone that shoots photos has to wonder about that. I mean, why are you taking pictures? There's like a basic urge to take pictures, but what is that? Why? I mean, what does it amount to?
Hmm.
I'm not going to sit here and answer it because who knows? Why does a spider spin a web? Well, that's a bad analogy. There's a reason for that. What's a better?
No, well,
I'm not.
that might be a good analogy because spiders are hardwired biologically to do it without their own intent. I mean, of course, we know it's to catch stuff, but a spider is, it'll almost do it for the sake of doing it rather than, I
Well, a
think,
spider needs to eat. That's why you spin a
yeah.
web.
Okay.
But um, I don't know. It's just it serves some central motivation, and maybe if I figured out why, it would be unsatisfying. I probably need to have some mystery in there about why I do it. It's definitely has something to do with like self-expression. I want to get something out there, and
Hmm.
then I want to sort of explore myself too, and
Hmm.
figure out what I respond to visually, what my voice is going to be through photos, and beyond. But there's a lot of ways I could do all that stuff, right? It doesn't have to be photography. I mean, people find all sorts of avenues for all that stuff. So why photos? It's just the way it is.
What is the longest period you've gone without shooting photos? Like how many days in a row consecutively was the longest period you haven't shot?
I don't know. Not that long. Maybe a day or two.
Oh, really? That's it?
Well, like not shooting any photos.
Yeah,
I mean,
just not shooting any photos.
well, that's sort of a trick question. I mean, there's not that many days I go without shooting it. I mean, I pretty much always shooting one or two here or there. I mean,
That's
it's
awesome.
not like I'm always going to go out and shoot like a whole roll or something, but
Hmm.
I wouldn't go for more than a day or two without taking a few pictures.
So do you always have your camera in like a camera bag, or do you have it around your neck, or you have it in your hand?
Right now it's downstairs. I have a little drawer that I keep them in when I'm at home, so they're nearby. When I take them out, I mean, I have one that sits in the car a lot of times. I think it's out in the car right now. And then I've got a sort of a stable of cameras, and then if I go somewhere, I'll pick a few to take. Usually it's the same ones. I mean, I'll take the Leica. Lately, I've been taking the Diana more. Because it's been sunny. I've been trying to take my TLR. I don't know. Depends what mood I'm in. But I mean, the cameras are around. I have them. I actually don't have one on me at this moment, but they're downstairs. Because there's nothing in my office that I'm probably gonna take a picture of in the next 5 months or 5 minutes.
That's a good point. Another question I was curious for you, Blake, is so you have such a deep knowledge of photography books and just photography in general. Like, how do you discover new photography books, or how do you know what photography books to buy? And it just seems like there's just so much out there that sometimes I get a bit overwhelmed, or I don't know what's good or whatever. Like, how do you discover new photography books, and what does your photography book collection look like at the moment?
I discover them probably the same way most people do. I mean, I find out some online. I'll hear about them here and there. And I go to Powell once in a while. I look for what's there. And the ampersand, I think I mentioned the ampersand earlier. So I go to like a few physical places and sort of sort through books.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what I'm drawn. I don't have too much problem when I see a book that I want. I know what attracts me and what doesn't. So that is sort of half the battle, right? Is figuring out like which books work for you and which don't. As far as so I can sort that out. I mean, I know where to find books, and I know which ones I'm sort of likely to find favorites with. But that still leaves like 99% of the books out there that I haven't seen and don't know about. And I'm not going to sit here as some expert and say like, oh, I know all the books and here's what like. I just know the ones that I happen to have come across that I've responded to, and then I know that there's a whole world out there. And I'm reminded every December when all these lists come out of all these books that I have never seen. Some of them look interesting, some of them don't. But there's a huge world of books out there.
So what are your if you were getting stuck on a desert island and you could only take a handful of books with you, what would they be?
I need time to think about that question.
Or just like off the top of your head, just like some personal preferences or favorites.
Well, I mean, the one that jumps to mind, just because I've been looking at today, is Songbook. I mean, that is a pretty landmark book, I think.
What did you like about Songbook?
Songbook, I like just about everything about it. I mean, it's sort of it's a jumble of photos that sort of work as photos, about Soth or relating to his past, but also as just random, bizarre photos that look sort of like science experiments or something.
Yeah.
They're very odd. I think he's picked a good sort of arrangement. I think it's purposely decontextualized. He tried to pick pictures and take their stories away and sort of make it a little mysterious. And I think he's done it pretty well. And so the book, works that way. It works sequencing. It works as like just about every way, I think. The idea of music and songs and how it relates to that. Anyway, I've been looking at it today, so it's sort of on my mind. I saw Matt, when I was in LA, he gave me a book by Victor Kolar, which is pretty good, that I like quite a bit.
What's the book?
It's from Canada. I can't remember the title. It's like Canadian pictures from like a 5-year period in the 70s.
And who is this by?
Victor Kolar. He's a Czech. Is he Czech? He's not sure where he's from. Eastern Europe somewhere.
Oh, okay.
That's a really good. As far as like just whatever street photography, if you want to put that label on it, it's pretty strong, I think.
Okay, I'll check that out.
But I don't know if that means it's a desert island book. I mean, I think anything I had on a desert island, I would probably get sick of after about a day or two.
Yeah.
Trying to eat.
Or just like any other. It doesn't have to be a desert island, but just like other favorite photography books.
Look at that pile of books out there. I don't know. Can I cheat and go look for a second?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. Yeah, this book. I just got this one at Ampersand. This was really good. The acid.
Was the title of the book?
It's pictures from this guy's collection from the 70s that are all a lot of double exposures and sort of weird effects, and it has like this real classic sort of California vibe.
Mm-hmm.
It feels very. I mean, I grew up in California in the 70s, so maybe that's why I like it. It feels like exactly like being in California.
Wait, what's the title of the book?
Family Acid. It's
Family.
I can send you the link. It's by Roger Stephens.
It's a
book of like old sort of snapshots that his family put together from his collection.
Cool.
Then there's this one's pretty cool. This is one I found at Powell's last week or a few weeks ago. By Alan Chasnoff.
What's the title of the book?
Alan Chasnoff. It's like a gallery catalog from the 80s, I think.
Oh, cool.
Weird. I mean, the pictures are just weird. They're sort of
super psychedelic.
Yeah. Don't look at them on psychedelics.
Yeah.
I think they're, as far as I can tell, they're real scenes that are photographed from a point of view that combines all these weird elements.
Yeah.
So they're like photoshopped almost, but they're actually like physical scenes.
Huh.
They're totally like. Anyway.
That sounds like a trip.
This guy Alan Chasnoff wrote the. What was the name of it? Beyond. Hold on. I can't find it. I'll send you the link later. But he wrote like a compilation, he edited a book of like optical illusion photographs, and he had a big show at Blue Sky in Portland that was sort of based on the same idea. Just pictures that trick the eye, which is sort of like, I mean, it sounds like a cheesy gimmick, sort of, but the pictures, if it's done well, I think they can work really well that way. So anyway, I think this is that's how I first heard of him, and then I found this book and realized he's actually a photographer and did that stuff. So.
Well, that's awesome. Nice.
Anyway.
Sweet. And then
that doesn't mean they're desert island books, though. They're just
I think that's a nice collection.
So those are like, if you asked me like a week from now, I'd probably pick a bunch of different ones, and they wouldn't be on the desert island either.
Nice. So we're kind of like hitting the 1 hour mark.
Right.
So I had a few more questions for you. So people listening to this, if you were to start street photography all over again, let's say, or start photography over again. So let's say you got into a time portal, and then you met Blake Andrews from 20 years ago. What advice would you give yourself if you started photography all over again?
Good question. The 20, I think the most important place to start is just to begin taking pictures,
Hmm.
and I mean, spend not too much time looking at stuff online or looking at books or anything like that, but just spend a lot of time behind a camera.
Hmm.
I go out and wander around with a camera, take pictures, and then look at your pictures and figure out what to think of them.
Hmm.
I mean, that's sort of what it comes down to. You can do, before anything else, that's what it's all about. That'll teach you a lot.
Hmm. And maybe some other just like tips or advice, or maybe common mistakes you think based on your teaching experiences, like common mistakes you think beginner street photographers make.
Common mistake. I don't see, the whole street photography thing is a little bit of a loaded question because I'm not qualified to teach street photography. I'm not even qualified. I don't even know what street photographers do exactly. So I think street.
Or maybe just photographers in general, like, or
In LA,
certain trends or things that you don't like. I mean, I know you're not a big fan of the art world or anything like that, but
I like art. I mean, I'm nothing against the art world.
okay.
I think that. I mean, here's what I noticed. Here's one thing that I think would be correctable that I noticed people doing in LA is not getting very close to things.
Not getting close enough.
Like we posed all these people on street corners. Like that was one of the assignments on one day. Is like put a person here, just have them like spend an hour there and just look around, figure out what's around, and capture things as they go by. And you could move around a little bit, but you're forced to basically stay on one corner. But a lot of the pictures from those assignments came back with stuff that was like 10 or 20 feet away, or stuff that was sort of, when it starts getting like 20 feet away, things become really small in the picture and become generally less important. So, I mean, it's sort of a classic cliche in photography. If pictures aren't good enough, get closer. Or I can't remember how Kappa phrased it, but you're not close enough if your pictures aren't good enough. That's like dumb advice, but I think it's good advice generally, especially in street photography. To really like figure out what you want to get in the picture and make that the main subject, and like that usually means being within 8 or 10 feet of it, if not closer. And when you get really into it, you can actually get really close, and then you can get like 3 feet away from someone, and you'd be surprised how seldom people actually notice you there. So, but as far as like what to do, don't do this, like put a picture together this way or that way. That I don't. It's impossible to get into all that stuff because any picture, like as soon as you tell someone how to do it one way, someone's gonna come back and say like, "Oh, I made this picture that works this way and it beats all the rules," and there are no rules really. I mean, I just said all that stuff about getting closer. There's thousands of pictures that are just the opposite of that work.
Do you still believe in your guiding principles, your 8 guiding principles?
You gotta remind me what they are.
Okay, so I'll read them out loud. So these are your guiding principles. Number 1, camera in hand always, unless asleep in bed. Number 2, film is cheap. 2A, digital looks cheap. 3, reality is stronger than imagination. 4, form subjugates essence yet requires it. 5, bystanders will quickly forget you, but a good photo lasts forever. 6, light should illuminate the subject matter but not be the subject matter. 6A, don't fight light, you'll always lose. 7, use right brain when shooting, left brain when looking over contact sheets. Paraphrase, this becomes 8, shoot first, ask questions later.
I'd say those are generally right. I mean, the film digital thing is probably, I think I wrote that way back in more of the film era, so I don't want to stick too close to that. I mean, the thing about the one that popped out on me there is reality is stronger than imagination. I think that's sort of the essence of photography, right? If you don't believe that, don't be a photographer.
What do you mean by reality is stronger than imagination?
I mean, the things that you can go find walking around are like a million times more interesting than what you could invent. To me, at least. I mean, the way I think and the way I take pictures and the photographs that I generally like to look at, reality is stronger than imagination.
All right, cool. So I think this is about a good time to end. So is there any other things you'd like to mention, Blake? Like any other projects that you're working on, or things you want people to stay updated with? Maybe anything about your photography, or the Portland/Eugene photography, or just any shout outs or anything like last things we'd like to mention.
Not that I can think of. No,
All right.
I I can't think quickly on the spot. But yeah, go shoot.
Okay. Cool. All right. Sweet. Thanks a lot, Blake.
All right, thanks,
All
sir.
right.
See ya.